What can I say but wow? That that cross-examination, that was pretty wild. I haven't seen one start out like that in a really long time. Hi, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a Missouri appellate attorney, retired, and I bring you a fresh perspective on the law without offering any legal advice. So pull up a chair. This is what we're discussing today. Back when I was doing expert depositions, it was common for us to do a background investigation on whoever the other side put up as an expert. If they put up a medical expert, we would go and pull all of his published research from the National Library of Medicine. You'd be amazed at how many helpful things are in that kind of material. And a lot of times that conflicts with the actual opinion that they plan to give at trial. So that has been that's one of the rather useful things you can do using the internet now is you can do a good background check on pretty much anybody. And for the most part, you don't look for things like convictions because the people who are in this business of testifying are not going to be the kind of people who have that kind of problem. But what you do look for is subtle resume enhancement and the uh, the fact that sometimes people fib a little bit with regard to authorship. For example, a lot of times there are multiple authors on scientific journal articles, and instead of saying that they were one of a group of authors, the person writing the resume will just put them down themselves as the sole author on an article where they may have contributed a paragraph instead of a complete portion of the actual research. So those are the kind of things that you look at and you look for when you're doing a background investigation on an expert. Every now and again, you come across things that are almost difficult to believe that somebody has effectively lied about their background. Several years ago in Kansas, one of my peers discovered that the doctor that was the subject of the lawsuit had never graduated from medical school. When you do get an expert who has falsified information on his CV or on his resume, that's the kind of thing that becomes really powerful in cross examination. And we got a really good example of that on this witness.
You have in front of you your CV that we just spoke about, and I'd ask you please to draw your attention to the education section where underneath in red it says BGS, and then, do I read it correctly? It says Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration, University of Alabama Birmingham, Alabama currently pursuing. Did I read that correctly?
You did read that correctly.
Thank you, sir.
But my guess is that in doing their background on him, they found there were multiple ways that he had characterized his credentials. So they came across one that was on his LinkedIn page, and it essentially represented that he had a bachelor's degree in science and mathematics.
That is that a fair and accurate representation of your personal LinkedIn page? You could take a moment to take a look at it.
Sure.
Mr. Lewis, I'm going to ask you to step back so all the jurors can see the
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Yes, it does with a error on page 2 regarding education.
Right, we're going to get to that.
Sure.
But this is you recognize this as a fair and accurate depiction of your personal LinkedIn page with the exception of what you just mentioned, correct?
Correct.
Did you draft that document that's represented as Exhibit WW?
I have drafted that over time, yes.
So he admits that's his LinkedIn page. He admits that it has a quote unquote error on it with regard to his education. and that he doesn't have a bachelor's degree, that he only has an associate's degree. And then, then there was this colloquy at the end.
So this is a third example of a document that incorrectly states that you have a Bachelor of Science when you do not possess that degree, correct?
It has errors or outdated information, correct?
Well, when you say outdated, how is it that you can call a date outdated next to something that you don't possess?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you just used the phrase either incorrect or outdated. I'm trying to understand your statement that it's
Sure. So
outdated. Isn't it either you have a Bachelor of Science degree or you don't? Isn't
I have represented I do not have a bachelor's degree.
right? But in here, it's represented that you do, correct?
Yes, it is
All
an
right.
error, yes.
So, let's look at what the name is that are on these documents. It says Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
Are you aware that there's no degree at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, called a Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration?
Yes, I am. And that is one of the errors I've identified.
So you would agree that there's not even a degree called Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration offered at the University of Alabama, correct?
Correct. That should be Bachelor of General Studies with minor in Mathematics and Business Administration.
And what you just articulated, you do not possess as you sit here today, correct?
That is correct.
What you possess is an associate's degree, correct?
Correct.
And when did you obtain that associate's degree?
So that would have been 2015.
Are you familiar with the term mendacity?
I am not.
And don't you just love that Alessi asks him if he knows what the meaning of mendacity is, and he says no. And of course he doesn't know what mendacity is, because he doesn't have a college education, and he's never been exposed to the word. But if he had been exposed to that word, he probably would have been offended at that question. But he wasn't, and that too is an indication of his quote-unquote expertise. Now, here are the problems that I see for the court and for the parties. First of all, this guy represents that he has a bachelor's degree he doesn't have, and he only has an associate's degree. It's certainly not a degree that qualifies you as an expert. For the most part, if, for example, somebody who had studied electrical engineering in college wanted to appear as an expert, he would need a master's degree at the very minimum to be considered an expert, and more likely than not, a PhD. These entry-level discipline type of degrees are not doorways to expertise. Now, it may be that he's relying on technical expertise, but having misrepresented his credentials in the way that he has, I have to wonder if the judge is going to let him continue to testify as an expert or strike his testimony. I think they should probably bring a motion to strike his testimony from the record because he misrepresented his expertise. He came in with supposedly with a bachelor's degree, and oopsie, he gets busted for not having that very degree that his entire expertise is premised on. And so I would hope that the judge would grant that. I don't think she probably will. And I don't even know if they'll ask because she has such a record of being somebody who will not make the proper ruling at the proper time. You don't usually see this kind of screw up in a trial. Usually you see a screw up like this at a deposition, and then the other side quietly pulls that expert and seeks leave of court to substitute a different expert because their first expert didn't do the job. And that gets, usually the court will allow that to happen. They will allow the person to substitute another expert. But in this situation, you're at the 11th hour. There's no way they can get an expert to come in and do the work that's been done and testify as a credible expert. So I would think if I was on the jury and I realized this guy was lying about his expertise and lying about his credentials, I would wonder if he was lying about his opinions too. But let me know what you think. Drop me a comment down below. Tell me what you think.
That's what I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful, interesting, or maybe both. If there's a subject you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to send me an email at the address above. If you like what we do, please feel free to subscribe and come on back to the beach tomorrow. I release videos every weekday, weather and work permitting. If you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for your fellow man. It makes the world a better place, one kind act at a time. And now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine that you might like.